Hey, this is Dave Fryer for Leading Agile Sound Notes here at Agile 2017. We're doing live interviews all week long with thought leaders and people that are speaking at the conference and Ron and Chet. I've been trying to prepare for this, but I have no idea what's going to happen. So,
what is this
craft
called?
services.
What is this called?
Sound Notes, but it's video. See,
you didn't update the name?
It's ironic. Well, usually it's audio.
It's ironic.
It's intentionally ironic.
But now we're doing video, but I can't call it video sound notes because that would be weird.
That would be weird.
We call it video notes, vid notes.
Then we have a branding issue.
Oh.
I didn't.
The marketing
When are we
department's
starting?
going to get all pissed. We've already started.
Okay,
I
good.
didn't wear my ironic hat.
All right. So
Here we are at Agile.
you guys are here.
At the 2017
like
Agile
to know-
Project Management Conference.
Yes. I would like to know. That just gave me a whole new question.
I remember when this used to be the Software Development Conference.
How
now
was the
it's the Project
Star Wars
Management
session?
Well, we only went to ours, and ours was excellent. People came in, they asked us questions, and we said things, and then they would say things, and then we would say things.
Okay.
Everybody but one person stayed until the very end,
Okay.
and so we think that's.
Do you want to call out the name of the person that left?
We don't know who it was,
Okay.
but we do have their picture, and we can show it later.
down.
Yes, we have
video,
them.
and we will look it up. I assume they had an emergency call.
I think so.
And didn't have a red nose.
It went well.
Production issue came up, I'm sure.
We did, of course, get the question we always get, which we cannot answer, because
Which
we
is?
do not know how, which is, how do I sell this stuff to my management? Somebody always asks that.
Okay.
And we don't know how to sell this stuff to your management. What we know how to do is to tell you how to do it if you're interested.
Okay.
So we did get that question that we can't answer, but we talked about it for 10 or 20 minutes anyway.
Okay. So I have a question I would like to ask you both.
Is it, how do we sell this stuff to our management?
No.
Go ahead then.
No. How do I sell this stuff? No. So the last time we spoke was in San Diego, and as you guys were leaving, I asked you a question, and part of the response was basically that if you're taking work and breaking it down for a team, or the team is breaking it down, that everything should be a one, right? Everything should be as small as a one. That's what you guys said.
That's not what we said.
I don't know that we
Well,
said
you
that.
just said, you didn't even turn around. You just said, there's two problems with your question. And he turned around and said, everything should be a one. And so I don't understand how to do that. Like, I literally don't know how to do that. So if you guys could talk a little bit about what that means to you and how you get there.
Here's what a thing that I believe. This is this year. That's that was last year.
That was this
It
spring.
was like 2 months
This
ago.
year we stole an idea from Neil Killick.
Okay.
And his idea is to slice stories down until they are one acceptance test long. And by one acceptance test, he doesn't mean a big long paragraph with 16 conjunctions in it. He means one acceptance test.
Okay.
And that tends to generate a story that is really small, and that should only take a very brief period of time.
Okay.
The time we allow, we actually disagree radically on this.
Okay.
I prefer 1 day or 2 days.
For the whole team, not for an individual.
For as many people as it takes to do that story.
Okay.
It's quite conceivable that with a good cross-functional team, you could do 2 or 3 stories at once.
Okay.
I would imagine. But Chet is much more lax than I am.
I believe that the maximum size you should shoot for is about 3 days.
Okay. I thought you were going to say like a day and an hour.
No, but about 3 days. And I sort of take that as about 3 days.
Okay.
And so if every now and then something took 4 days, I wouldn't worry about it very much.
Okay.
And if that's your maximum size, then your average size is probably going to be about 2 days, and that's perfectly fine. The reason I say 3 days is back when I was a programmer mostly. Well, I don't do very much mostly programming anymore, but I used to. And when people would ask me how long it would take to do something, if I said it took 3 days or less, I actually knew what it was I was going to do.
Yeah.
And if it took longer than that, and I said
digging.
longer than that, I really didn't know, and I was just making it up.
Okay.
And I just assume everybody's like that.
Okay.
And so if somebody tells you something's going to take 5 days, they really don't know what they're going to do.
Okay.
And you should probably try to get that a little bit better.
All right.
Now, the thing Ron talked about is making it one acceptance test, which means you're kind of dealing with one idea. The basic vision I have, and there's lots of ways of thinking about this, but I think it's true both at the macro level and at the micro level, is that we have some idea for a product or a feature, either one. And we have a very high fidelity notion of that feature.
Right.
You guys are broadcasting out, I'm sure, at 4K video or something, right? Imagine.
Pulling numbers out of my 645 aught 7 hertz.
240 by 180.
Yeah.
You know,
You're represented by
I have 4 pixels used for me, and that's really high definition. You can get 4K video and a very high end monitor today. You can't build that fidelity in 3 days for a feature or 2 weeks for a product.
Right.
And so what you have to deal with is something of lower fidelity to start with. We start building something at 640 by 480.
Okay.
But it's the thing.
Yeah.
It's just not a very good picture of the thing yet.
Okay.
And then we add more fidelity, add more bits to it,
Right.
make it clearer and clearer and sharper. And there'll be some places where we have some unknowns and we want to make that part really sharp early because we're afraid of what's going on in there. We want to know about it. And other places we can wait till later. And there's probably some shadows around the corner that we don't care if they ever get very high resolution because there's nothing interesting there to see.
Okay.
And so that's the kind of what I want to do at the product level and at the feature level. I want to slice it down. So in the first pass, I get a feature that looks like the thing I want, and I've learned stuff about it. And then later on, I can add more and more and more to add up to the fidelity we need eventually.
Okay.
And you won't know what that is
until
you get there,
All right.
because you'll be wrong at the beginning because that's how the world is.
All right.
Now, let me explain why Chet's wrong.
Would you care to
But only wrong about the 3.
Okay.
I would like to see a team doing a 1-week sprint rather than a 2-week sprint.
Really? Okay.
Because if I show my customers the product more frequently,
More feedback.
communication is better, I
Yeah.
get better feedback, they are more certain, they are more happy with what I'm doing.
Okay.
So I'd like to see a short sprint. If I'm doing stories that are 3 days long,
That's the whole sprint.
I really had better start that story no later than Tuesday in case it goes 4 days long.
Yeah.
And I can't start it on Wednesday because it almost certainly won't be done by Friday afternoon because Friday afternoon is pizza. So the smaller, and I think we actually agree on this, the smaller you can get your stories,
Yes.
the more likely you are to be able to complete all of them
Yeah.
in the time interval, or to have completed all the ones you started and not have any left over.
Okay.
Because if you're doing 5 things, and by Thursday you've got 4 of them done, and you see that you can't do the 5th one, you stop and you refactor your code, you do something else.
Okay.
Because you don't want a half-done story hanging over the weekend.
So you guys would rather not start that last story than start it and not finish
Than
it?
hang it over.
Right.
Okay.
It's because there's going to be
You're gonna have to spin back
because there's
up.
going to be a seam in it when you
Yeah.
if you break on this thing and then come back 2 days later, there's going to be a seam in the code right there that you've forgotten. So what we did this 20 years ago, if we would start something and not finish it, we would throw it away and start again
Wow.
the next day or the next week. Because you've learned all the stuff, you'll actually do it in much less time and probably better.
Okay.
So
And so I would like to break things down at a logical level to be small chunks of just a few hours. Because our basic practice is, as Ron just said, that if we get to the end of the day
Right.
and we don't have something that
So you're talking about a story in a couple hours.
a slice of a story that gets me to a green bar
Okay.
in a couple hours.
But I just want to.
So the story may not be done. The story may not be done, but I'm at a green bar. I have stuff that I know works, and I can release the code to my other developers, not to the outside world, but I can commit my code. I want to be able to do that before I go home.
Okay.
And then tomorrow I can pick up where I left off because I know I'm in a safe place to start again.
Okay.
If I get that and I'm not able to get to a green bar and it's time to go home, I throw that code away and redo it tomorrow.
Wow.
Because I will have learned stuff and I will do it better, faster the next day, cheaper.
Okay.
The other thing you do, just as a add to that little thing, is when I go to lunch,
Yeah.
I always leave a red bar. Because that way I don't have to worry about what I'm working on over lunch. When I come back, I run the code, and what's broken is what I'm working on.
Okay.
I leave a pointer in the code to what I'm working on.
All right.
Chad has a tendency to come back from lunch having forgotten a lot. I'm not sure what's causing it. You were asking about how tiny the stories could be, though.
Yes.
And I don't believe there's any obvious limit to how small a story can be before it stops showing business value that the customer can understand, that the product owner can understand. Maybe you're building a screen that's going to have 100 things on it.
Yeah.
But the most important thing about building any new screen is getting in, getting the data, and getting out I can do that with one field. I say, okay, here's the screen, look, it says at the top, whatever new screen you just asked for.
Yeah.
It's got one data field right now and an OK button. It'll really have 16 data fields and 2 buttons, but here it is.
Yeah.
So I think you can generally make something visible in really just a few hours. If you're working in a grubby enough, slow enough code base, then that's not the case.
Okay.
But particularly if you're starting anywhere near greenfield or with anywhere near good code, I would suggest that people never try and set some limit to say we would never try to do a half-hour story.
Okay.
Because you ought to try to find out if it's possible.
See what happens.
Because
Okay.
sometimes it is.
All right. So while you guys are answering, and I appreciate you answering this question, I'm thinking of all the things my students are going to ask when I tell them they have to watch this video. And the first thing they're going to think, which I think there's probably a quick answer to, you say one acceptance test. A bunch of my students are going to say, yeah, so we finished development, now it's ready for QA. So that's the acceptance test, is it ready for QA? And you're going to make that face, and you're going to tell me that that's incorrect, right?
Well,
tell
I'm not
tell
gonna
my
tell you
students that I'm
I'm going to tell you
in.
that it doesn't work.
Okay.
You are required, if you're doing Scrum, and I assume your students are
Yes,
sort of doing Scrum.
I'm assuming they do too.
It says right there on page whatever of the Scrum guide
Yeah.
that the team at the end of every sprint delivers running, tested, integrated, working, shippable code.
Yeah.
It doesn't say to QA.
Yeah.
There is, if you have separate QA,
Yeah.
even on your team, okay, first of all, cross-functional team able to do everything.
Yeah.
Therefore, you cannot have separate QA. If there's QA, it has to be in your team,
Right.
or you're not doing Scrum yet. You're doing you're
Weird.
approximate, you're
Yeah.
learning Scrum, but you're not doing it. If you have QA inside that you hand off to, then that means the programs have to be done with everything on Wednesday,
So you can finish.
so that the QA guys have at least Thursday and Friday to try and find bugs. And
you have time to
ideally-
fix them.
and
You have
if
time
they-
to fix
If they find the bug on Friday, the programmers aren't going to be able to fix it because it's too late, and stories that they thought were done are going to not be done. And meanwhile, somebody's going to come by and say, why are these programmers just sitting here? And you say, because it's Thursday and Friday, and the programmers don't work on Thursday and Friday. Well, why not? Because QA. And they're going to be like, well, why don't you work on next week? Now all of a sudden you've got sprints that are overlapping like this. You have stories with
So
different
what do you have
priorities
them do
communicated
on
with different
Thursday and
times.
Friday?
You don't do it that way.
You don't do it that way.
You write the acceptance tests first. When a story comes into the sprint,
Yeah.
it should have its acceptance test associated with it. Where does that happen? That happens in backlog refinement. We sit with the product owner during this week and we say, what do you think you're going to work on next week?
Yeah.
And the product owner says, well, I was going to give you this. And we say, well, okay, well, how does that have to work? And the testing-oriented people, the QA people, if you have that kind of people,
Yeah.
or just testing-oriented people, or just any random developer, sit with the product owner and they say, well, how are we going to check that? Oh, well, we'll check it this way, and this way, and this way. Could you give us an example? You get the example, you automate it, and on Monday morning, the product owner comes in and says, I want you to do this, and somebody on the team says, and by the way, the acceptance test is number 631, and you can run it right now and see that it doesn't work.
Excellent.
In extreme programming, there's this really wonderful technique, an artifact called user story. I don't know if you're familiar with
This is a beautiful segue to my next question.
called user story. And a user story has 3 parts.
Yeah.
Conversation,
Right.
card,
Card.
confirmation. Confirmation. So you don't have a user story unless you have confirmation.
Right.
An automated acceptance test is confirmation.
All right.
And so you have that before you start working, and when the test runs, you're done.
Yeah.
You have a little contract that says, when this test runs, this user story has been delivered.
Okay.
Now that has a-
Otherwise, how would the developer know they're done?
Well,
Well, that's an amazing other little bit of strength. If we've agreed with the product owner that this is the test,
Yeah.
then when they come back and they see what we did and they don't like it, which often happens,
Yeah.
they don't get to say, you didn't do what I said.
Right.
We now have the appropriate conversation, which is, I don't like what we got, and we can study whether we could have said it better or whether we just had to see it before we did it. And that's just fine. Sometimes it's just fine to say, build me the screen. I'm not really going to understand what I want until I click on it a little bit. I want to have a sense of it. So I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Now, I did want to touch on something about all of this. We're talking about how you do this when you do it well. When you are good at this.
You already know how to do it when you do it poorly.
When you are good at this, you will do backlog refinement, you will get your acceptance tests, you will get those tests automated early, either the end of the previous week or the beginning of this week.
Yeah.
You will use those tests to find out when you're done. When you're done, those tests will be so sufficient that the product owner will say, yep, that's what I said. I hate it now, but that's what I said.
Yeah.
And when you put the test before the code's done when the test run and you stop.
Right.
That's so cool, and it works so much better than doing it the other way around, that as soon as you learn how to do that, you'll never go back.
Right.
Your students are going to say to you, do we have to do that? No, you don't have to do that. Also, you don't have to be successful. But if you really want to be graceful at doing this,
Yeah.
that's how you do it.
Okay.
There are ways to hold your tennis racket that will work, and ways to hold it that will sort of work.
Right.
And the trick is to learn the one that
Does
works.
work. Okay.
And it's the same here. Learn the things that work, and a lot of those are already known and understood and out there in the literature. You'll have to shape them to your situation. Your acceptance test won't look like mine. But you will find if you move testing to the front, it's better than if you're testing at the back.
You've probably discovered this in playing the guitar. I'm sure you made a tremendous improvement in the quality of your guitar playing once you discovered that the strings are supposed to be on the outside, not on the end. Right?
Yes.
Makes a tremendous difference. And so there's just little things like that teams
Yeah.
need to learn in order to be successful. And there's all kinds of interesting, cool things that happen when you start building tests and seeing the power of them. We had back 20 years ago at Chrysler, 22 years ago at Chrysler, we had these incredibly complex retirement plans, which no one actually understood.
Okay.
And so one of our guys, Ralph Beatty, wrote up a whole big suite of acceptance tests, walking through how all this stuff happened when you earned this much money, and you paid this much money into this plan, and you hit this limit, and you went into this plan, and blah, 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 and all these intricate things that happened.
Right.
He took all those tests over to the folks who administered the savings plan program and showed them this and said, is this right? And they said, we had no idea that's how it worked. They didn't know the implications of the rules they had. They took those back, and they studied them for about a week, 2 weeks, and finally came back, and they had a few little corrections here and there, but it taught them a whole lot about the stuff that they didn't even understand.
So the testing's going to help you gain more knowledge about what you're actually doing.
Yes, and
Okay.
you and perhaps even your stakeholders.
Yeah.
Because in a very complex world, my guess is they don't know. They were always working in a world where we did something, because I used to support those
It
guys.
just happens.
And we did something, we showed it to them, and they said, looks okay.
Yeah.
You know, they knew it when they saw it, but they had no way of telling us up front what the right answers were.
Okay.
So
if the thing is going to be between like a half an hour and a day, or maybe 3 days, we've talked about this before. You guys don't believe that a team should have to task the work out, correct?
we would prefer you not to.
Okay. So why is that?
Well, if you get things down small enough,
Right.
then you just sort of mob on it, then the level that you need to coordinate is at the user story level. I mean, the reason you task stuff out is to have multiple people working on
this way they're all
things.
swarming
So we're
on
kind of
together.
swarming on things, and so you find that you just don't need to do that anymore. It's not that I'm intentionally doing away with it. It's just that we just didn't need it anymore.
Okay.
Now, there are two things that happen when you task things out that I think argue against doing it.
Okay.
First of all, when you task things out, you are saying at the moment when you know the least about this story, what it's designed.
the same
is.
argument for not
You're
doing
saying
project
it's gonna be made of
management.
this,
Exactly
this,
right.
and this, and you don't know this. You know, you just made this up.
Yeah.
And you have to be a good guess because you're good at your job, but it won't be right. But the other thing that happens is if you then divide that work up, which is kind of what you do with tasks, then when I build mine and you build yours and we go to put them together, they won't fit.
Right.
Whereas if you as the expert on this kind of thing and me as the expert on this kind of thing sit down and work together, we'll kind of fit it together as we go.
Right.
If you get the tile guys and the cabinet guys in the room at the same time, you're going to get a different kind of a layout on the kitchen floor than you do if you bring in one and then the other. You bring in the tile guys second, and they say, "Who laid this out? I'm going to have to cut every tile I own."
Yeah.
And if we'd worked together, we would have seen a way to
Done
do
that better, yeah.
So those things push against tasking.
Okay.
The good thing about tasking, and this is worth doing always, is that it is a first conversation about the design.
Right.
And I think we should have a first conversation. We say, well, obviously we're going to have to build something new in the database. That's going to be a whole new transaction. We need that GUI page that's got all the fields on it.
Right.
The model's got to be changed to add this new object. It'll be something like that, and we all talk about that before we go in. because you don't need to just go in and thrash around wondering what to do. You do a little planning up front.
Okay.
But you don't commit to that, and you don't assign work to that.
Right.
You just use it as a moment of design.
Awesome.
But as you pointed out, it's like any kind of planning. The process of doing it teaches you things, but being measured by how well you
Follow them,
followed
not
it is
necessarily.
probably a dysfunction at any level.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I got one more, and I'm very grateful to you guys for this. Can you do one more?
I can do
That's an
one
easy
more.
All right. So I interviewed a guy about 2 weeks ago who's a digital project manager. And they, in those agencies, a lot of them struggle with, we used to call them web shops back
Yes,
in the day.
yes. I was comparing that to analog project managers.
Yeah.
I was kind of-
So in his organization, somebody somewhere made the decision, we're all going to Agile, right? And it was that kind of top-down, maybe poorly understood push, but the person also mandated that everything that anyone was going to work on had to be written up in user story format, every single thing. So if I want to order a server, I have to write a story that says, as a database administrator, I would like to acquire a new server so that I can administrate it.
That's interesting.
And I said, that doesn't sound very smart to me. And I said I was going to come to the conference and I was going to get a more learned response.
Well, I will say one thing about that. In 22 and a half years of working with user stories, I have never written one that way.
Okay.
And so the thing people talk about as the user story format, I don't know what that is, because
Okay.
there is no format like that in real user stories. User stories are conversation, card, and confirmation. And so I don't think that incantation is particularly useful
Okay.
to me.
Okay.
There may be people who find that incantation useful.
I think the checklist.
Thinking
who
about
wants
those
it,
things.
Who wants it? What is it? Why do we want it?
Yeah.
That's a great checklist. But if you write your user stories in that format, and you look at the deck of cards, they all say, as of this, as of this, as of this, as of this, as of this. And you have to pick them up and look inside, and then I want that. And it's like, you
What was
don't
the
write
point?
text that way. You don't write poetry
Yeah.
that way, unless you're writing really dumb poetry. Why would you try and communicate with humans that way? It's good to know who wants it. It's good to know what they want. It's good to know why they want it.
Yeah.
It's good to know how they're going to use it. There's lots of things you might want to know. But the first thing I would do is I would step away from that format. Is that the Nokia format? Is that what that is? I forget. Who got the blame?
See, I looked it up because I wanted to make sure, like,
We didn't
you're
do it.
actually, but you're actually listed as the 3 C's guy, and you guys work on this stuff.
We're
all
the
the
three
time.
C's guys. We don't do this. We don't do this. That format.
It's bad
we
writing.
consider that format to be training wheels.
Okay.
It's a good thing as you first write stories to say, as who wants it, what do they want, why do they want it? And I would have said who, what, why, but that's
Okay.
I don't think that makes more sense. But that's you don't ride your bike with training wheels. I watched the Tour de France and there was no guy in there with training wheels. They just don't do it anymore. They're not.
Right.
They're
They don't
done
need
with
it.
that.
They don't need that.
So I don't like that aspect of it. The other aspect I don't like is
Yeah.
what part of self-organization is this guy up here telling all the teams they're going to do
That's-
something? That is worse because it's directly counter to the principles
Right.
of agile software development.
Taking
which is
that away from the team,
self-organization.
yeah.
What does this guy really want? Well, probably wants to know what everybody's doing in a form that he can understand. Maybe. Now, I don't believe he wants to read those because
No.
no one in our
He
mind
wants
would
them to
wanna-
do Agile
would want to
the
read
right
those.
way.
So
That's
but he has some need, which is to say, I need to know what all the departments are working on,
Yeah.
okay? And I would like to have that rolled up for me in a consistent format because inconsistent formats confuse me because I'm not a very bright guy or I wouldn't be a boss. And so he can ask for that, he should ask for that. Now, the best way, of course, for a team to say what they've done is to say, by the way, here's the software, would you like to look at it?
Yeah.
But when you're talking about what you're planning to work on, what you're gonna do, it's sensible to ask for a roll-up.
Okay.
So he has needs, he has valid needs, and then he has these other things he wants to do, which is he wants to tell everybody what to do. Oh, sorry, we don't tell each other what to do anymore. We tell each other what we need. We say
Okay.
to the team, we need information, we need software, we need documentation, we need whatever we need.
Right.
They figure out how to do it, and they give it to us, and we look at it and we say, that's good, except it's inconsistent, because you guys make the format consistent. That's good, except it doesn't tell me who wanted it.
Okay.
I'd like to know who wanted it. That's good, except it doesn't tell me how it's
So
going
we
to
should
be.
answer the questions, but
So
not in a
he should be
prescribed
asking
way of saying it.
questions. He should be expressing needs
Okay.
in the same way that the product owner expresses needs.
Okay.
And the product owner shouldn't come in and say, I want a page that's got these 21 fields on it. The product owner should come in and say, I need a way for people to order a book.
Okay.
And they have to be able to use their credit card, and it has to have all the books that are in the world on it, and it should be easy to use, and there should be 2 buttons that you click to get the job, because you can't have one click button, because Amazon owns the trademark on that. So they should give us as little information as they can about the specifics.
Okay.
But if you look at what product owners are supposed to do, the product says what they want. Team says how they do it.
Yeah.
Same thing. This manager should say what they want. The team should say how they do it, and they should get the feedback.
Okay.
The manager says, no, I don't like it that way. Why not? Well, I don't like blue. Oh, okay, fine, we'll make it green. How's that?
Okay.
The thing you're discussing there, the question comes from a place, I'm guessing, that I often see in the notion that everything needs to be a user story.
Yeah.
So I can put it into whatever tool we
Yeah,
bought.
but why couldn't I just say order a server?
Why can't you just say order a server? You know, but my understanding of Scrum is that not everything the team does is on the backlog.
Okay.
Not everything the team does is on the backlog.
Really?
Only the things the product owner wants are on the backlog.
All right.
And there's other
Now
things
I'm
that have to happen,
confused. I'm
right?
actually confused.
Right? The
Where do
backlog-
you put the other stuff?
I don't care.
Give me an example of other stuff.
I need to
Buy
order
a server.
You could have a department that had buy a server on the backlog, but the team's problem isn't buy a server. They're not going to buy the server anyway.
All right.
So it might be that the server ordering department should get an order ticket that says buy a server, and they should put it up on their Kanban board, because, by the way, they shouldn't be doing Scrum, because ordering people are flow-oriented, not cyclic-oriented.
Okay.
They should have a ticket.
But don't you guys think that I have said to people that everything the team's going to do in the sprint, that should all be in the backlog.
I don't
in the
believe
sprint
that.
backlog.
I don't
Okay.
believe that.
Are you going to put backlog refinement?
I
in the
apologize to everyone
Are
I've
you
taught.
going to put lunch?
back- Are you going to put lunch in the
Have
backlog?
lunch on the
Actually,
backlog?
when I teach Girl Scouts, we put lunch, go to the bathroom, drink water, all that kind of stuff.
The Girl Scouts have
But
backlog.
for adults, not that. But
You're going to put backlog
but part of it
refinement on the
is
backlog?
I want them to be for folks who want to know, are they actually doing enough
Trap
stuff,
question.
things
Trap
like
So
that.
question.
I-
Are you going to put backlog refinement on the backlog?
No, and I actually got asked
So
that
now-
question
Yeah.
last week.
Now
Yeah.
we know there is something you don't put on the backlog.
Yeah.
Now the question you have to keep
All right.
asking yourself
Is why?
should this be on the backlog, or should it be just a thing we do?